Mr. Grant's pen hovers over the termination letter as Mrs. Thompson polishes his marble floor one last time. The scent of lemon cleaner mingles with his expensive cologne. 20 years of faithful service ends with a signature. The wealthy businessman dismissing the woman who raised his children while he built his empire. Tonight, her face will appear on every news channel in the city. The phone rings in exactly 3 hours with an offer that changes everything. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and tap subscribe so you never miss a story.
Mr. Grant adjusts his silk tie and stares at the coffee stain on his white marble counter. The dark spot spreads across the pristine surface like spilled ink. His jaw tightens as he watches Mrs. Thompson scrub desperately at the mark. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Grant," she whispers, her weathered hands shaking. "The cup slipped when I heard the phone ring." 20 years, Eleanor," he says, using her first name for the first time in months. 20 years of trust. "Please, sir, it was an accident. I can clean it properly with the right solution." The grandfather clock in the hallway chimes 8 times. Mr. Grant's business partners arrive in 2 hours for the biggest deal of his career. The pristine house must be perfect. Every surface must gleam. Every detail must prove his success. "I've already called the agency," he says coldly. "They're sending someone else." Mrs. Thompson's cleaning cloth drops to the floor. The sound echoes through the empty kitchen like a judge's gavel. She picks up her worn leather purse and walks toward the door. But the phone starts ringing. The phone's shrill tone cuts through the silence as Mrs. Thompson pauses at the kitchen door. Mr. Grant answers with his usual business voice, sharp and commanding. The marble counter still shows the faint shadow of the coffee stain despite her frantic scrubbing. "Grant Industries," he barks into the receiver. "What do you mean the mayor's office called?" Mrs. Thompson remembers the first day she worked in this house. Mr. Grant was young then, struggling to build his company. She had cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, and watched his children grow up. Now his daughter lived across the country. His son rarely called, and the house felt like a museum. "No, I haven't seen the morning news," Mr. Grant continues, his voice dropping. "What story?" The leather purse in Mrs. Thompson's hands contains her final paycheck and a small silver locket, the only photograph she has of her late daughter. She never speaks of Sarah to anyone. The pain stays buried deep, like the memories of the hospital bills that consumed her savings years ago. "I'll call you back," Mr. Grant says, hanging up abruptly. Mrs. Thompson turns the brass doorknob and steps outside, but Mr. Grant's footsteps follow her to the driveway. Mr. Grant catches up to Mrs. Thompson beside her old blue sedan. The morning sun reflects off the car's faded paint, highlighting every scratch and dent. He holds a white envelope in his manicured hands. "Eleanor, wait," he calls, slightly out of breath. "You forgot this." "Thank you, sir," she says, accepting her final paycheck. "I hope the new girl works out well. The agency said she has excellent references. She'll start tomorrow." Mrs. Thompson nods and opens her car door. The hinges creak like old bones. Inside, a small photo of a young woman in a nurse's uniform sits taped to the dashboard. Her daughter, Sarah, who passed away unexpectedly 3 years ago. "Eleanor," Mr. Grant says suddenly, "why did you never ask for time off? In 20 years? I needed the work, sir, and this was my home too." The words hang in the morning air like morning mist. Mr. Grant steps back as she starts the engine. The old car coughs and sputters before finding its rhythm. Through the rear window, he watches her silver hair disappear down the tree-lined street. His phone buzzes with another urgent message, but Mrs. Thompson's taillights are already fading. The business meeting unfolds perfectly in Mr. Grant's spotless dining room. Crystal glasses catch the afternoon light while his partners sign contract after contract. The new maid moves silently between the rooms, efficient but unknown. She lacks Mrs. Thompson's gentle touch with the antique china. "Congratulations, Grant," his partner says, shaking hands. "This merger will make you one of the wealthiest men in the state." Success requires difficult choices, but his eyes drift to the marble counter. The coffee stain has vanished completely. The new girl used some chemical solution that worked like magic, yet something feels wrong in the kitchen. The copper kettles seem too bright, the wooden spoons sit in different places. Even the air smells different without Mrs. Thompson's presence. At 6 o'clock, Mr. Grant pours himself whiskey and turns on the evening news. The anchor's serious expression fills the wide screen above his fireplace. Behind her, a familiar face appears in a photograph that makes his glass slip. "Tonight, we honor Eleanor Thompson," the anchor begins. The whiskey crashes to the marble floor, and the doorbell starts ringing insistently.
Mr. Grant stares at the television screen as Mrs. Thompson's photograph fills the frame. The whiskey spreads across his marble floor, but he doesn't move. The doorbell continues its urgent chiming, while the news anchor's voice grows more emotional. Eleanor Thompson, a local hero, saved 17 children from a school bus accident last month. The front door opens without invitation. Margaret Miller, his elderly neighbor, storms into the living room with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. She has lived next door for 30 years and never approved of his treatment of household staff. "How could you?" Margaret demands, pointing at the television. "How could you fire that angel?" "I didn't know about any accident," Mr. Grant stammers. "The whole neighborhood knows. Eleanor pulled those children from the burning bus while everyone else stood frozen. She's been visiting them in the hospital every day since." The news story continues with footage from the accident scene. Mrs. Thompson appears briefly in the background, her gray hair disheveled, her clothes torn. She carries a small girl toward safety, while smoke billows behind them. "She never mentioned it," Mr. Grant whispers. Margaret's pearl necklace trembles with her anger. "That woman worked for you for 2 decades, and you threw her away over spilled coffee?" The television shows Mrs. Thompson's modest apartment building, and a news van pulls up outside. The news reporter stands outside Mrs. Thompson's apartment building, microphone in hand. Behind her, neighbors gather on the sidewalk, some holding flowers and handmade signs. The building looks tired, with chipped paint and narrow windows, nothing like Mr. Grant's mansion. Eleanor Thompson lives quietly in this working-class neighborhood. She's worked as a domestic helper for over 40 years, always putting others first. Mr. Grant's neighbor, Margaret, still stands in his living room, her arms crossed. Her disappointment fills the room like heavy perfume. Through the window, more neighbors gather on his perfect lawn, their voices rising in animated conversation. "She saved my grandson Tommy," Margaret says softly. "He was trapped under a seat when the bus caught fire. Eleanor crawled back 3 times to get every child out." The camera shows Mrs. Thompson opening her apartment door, looking overwhelmed by the attention. She wears the same modest blue dress she wore to work this morning. In her hands, she holds a small potted plant, a gift from one of the rescued children's families. "I just did what anyone would do," Mrs. Thompson tells the reporter. "Those babies needed help." "You risked your life 17 times," the reporter responds. Mr. Grant reaches for his phone, but Margaret grabs his wrist with surprising strength. "Don't you dare call her now," she hisses. Outside, his pristine lawn fills with concerned neighbors, and their judgment burns hotter than the spilled whiskey. The crowd on Mr. Grant's lawn grows larger as evening shadows stretch across his perfectly manicured garden. Neighbors he barely knows stand near his fountain, whispering and pointing toward his house. Their voices carry through the open windows like an unwelcome symphony. "I heard he fired her this morning," someone said loudly, "right after she saved all those children." Margaret Miller still stands in his living room, her pearl earrings catching the lamplight. She holds her worn leather purse like a weapon, ready to defend Mrs. Thompson's honor. Her presence fills the space with decades of neighborly disapproval. "Eleanor never asked for recognition," Margaret continues. "She's been caring for this whole street for years, walking Mrs. Carter's dog when she was sick, bringing soup to the Sullivan family during hard times." Mr. Grant turns off the television, but the damage spreads beyond his control. His phone buzzes with messages from business associates who saw the news. His reputation, carefully built over decades, crumbles with each notification. "She never told me about any of this," he says weakly. "Why would she? You barely looked at her as a human being." The evening light fades outside, casting long shadows across his marble floors. Through the window, he watches more people arrive with flowers and handmade cards. They transform his exclusive neighborhood into something warm and community-minded. His phone rings with an unknown number, but Margaret snatches it from his hands. Margaret answers Mr. Grant's phone with authority, her voice sharp and protective. The caller's words flow through the speaker, urgent and professional. Outside, the crowd continues growing, drawn by social media posts and local news coverage. "This is Channel 7 News," the voice explains. "We're looking for Mr. Grant to comment on his relationship with Eleanor Thompson." "He has no comment," Margaret snaps, ending the call immediately. Mr. Grant sinks into his leather armchair, overwhelmed by the evening's revelations. The expensive furniture suddenly feels cold and unwelcoming. His success means nothing compared to Mrs. Thompson's quiet heroism over 20 years of faithful service. "She worked here since my children were small," he says, mostly to himself. "She knew their favorite foods, their bedtime stories, their fears." Margaret's expression softens slightly, though her posture remains rigid. Her silver hair frames her face like a helmet of righteous anger. The pearl necklace at her throat catches the light from his crystal chandelier. "Eleanor raised those children while you traveled for business. She nursed them through illness, celebrated their victories, comforted their heartbreak." The front door opens again without invitation. Mrs. Thompson herself walks slowly into the living room, carrying a small bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, his children's thank you notes from years past. The room falls completely silent, and her eyes meet his for the first time as equals.
"I came to return these." Her modest blue dress wrinkled from the day's overwhelming events. The bundle of letters in her hands trembles slightly, bound with a ribbon that has faded from years of careful handling. Her silver hair catches the light from Mr. Grant's expensive chandelier. "I came to return these," she says quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "I kept them all these years." Margaret Miller steps aside respectfully, her earlier anger replaced by protective concern. Through the windows, the crowd has grown to include news vans and curious onlookers. Camera lights flash against the evening sky like fallen stars. "Eleanor, you don't need to," Mr. Grant begins, rising from his chair. "Yes, I do," she interrupts gently. "These letters belong to your family." She unties the ribbon with careful fingers. The first letter, written in crayon by his daughter Sarah, reads, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for making my birthday cake special. I love you more than ice cream." The childish handwriting brings tears to Mr. Grant's eyes. "I never knew they wrote to you," he whispers. "Children see kindness differently than adults do," Mrs. Thompson replies. Margaret reaches for her own pearl-handled tissue box, offered like a peace treaty. The gesture bridges 20 years of unspoken neighborhood tensions. The front door opens once more, but this time it's Channel 7's lead reporter. The reporter enters with professional confidence, her red suit bright against Mr. Grant's neutral decor. Behind her, a cameraman adjusts his equipment, while the crowd outside presses closer to the windows. The invasion feels surreal in the normally private sanctuary of his home. "Mr. Grant, I'm Jessica Ford from Channel 7 News," she announces. "We'd like to ask about your working relationship with Eleanor Thompson." Mrs. Thompson clutches the letters tighter, her weathered hands showing decades of honest labor. Margaret positions herself protectively beside the older woman, creating a human shield against the intrusion. The pearl necklace at Margaret's throat catches the camera's harsh lights. "This isn't the time," Mr. Grant says firmly. "Mrs. Thompson has been through enough today. The public wants to know how someone who risked her life for children could lose her job the same morning," Jessica continues relentlessly. "Mrs. Thompson speaks before anyone can stop her. Mr. Grant had every right to let me go. I made a mistake with his coffee service." The admission hangs in the air like incense in a church. Margaret's face shows shock at Mrs. Thompson's loyalty despite everything. Even the reporter seems momentarily speechless at such grace under pressure. "Coffee service?" Jessica repeats incredulously. "I spilled coffee on his marble counter during an important business day," Mrs. Thompson explains simply. The cameraman zooms in on the pristine counter, and the reporter's expression changes completely. Jessica Ford stares at the spotless marble counter,
her professional composure cracking. The camera captures every detail of the immaculate surface, while Mrs. Thompson's confession echoes through the room. Outside, the crowd's murmur grows louder as word spreads about the coffee incident. "You fired a hero over spilled coffee?" Jessica asks, her voice rising with disbelief. Mr. Grant feels the weight of every eye in the room. Margaret Miller's disapproval burns like a physical force. Mrs. Thompson's dignity shines despite her humble circumstances. The reporter's judgment threatens to destroy his carefully built reputation forever. "I didn't know about the accident. She never told me," he desperately says. "Heroes don't brag," Margaret interjects, her voice cutting like ice. Mrs. Thompson steps forward, still holding the bundle of childhood letters. Her worn black shoes click against the marble floor that caused this entire crisis. The sound echoes through the room like a funeral march. "Mr. Grant has always been fair to me," she says firmly. "He paid well, provided references, treated me with respect." The lie hangs heavy in the air. Everyone knows he barely acknowledged her existence, but her loyalty remains unshaken after 20 years of faithful service. The children he raised turned out wonderful. That speaks to his character. Jessica scribbles notes furiously, sensing a different angle to the story. Her red suit seems too bright for the emotional weight filling the room. Margaret opens her purse and pulls out a small silver compass, and the reporter's eyes light up with interest. Margaret holds up the silver compass, its polished surface reflecting the camera's bright lights. The antique piece looks expensive, clearly a family heirloom passed down through generations. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widen with recognition and something approaching wonder. "This belonged to my husband," Margaret explains to the reporter. "He was a ship captain for 40 years. "I don't understand the connection," Jessica Ford says, confused. "Eleanor found this in my garden last spring. It had been lost for 3 years after my husband passed away unexpectedly. She cleaned it, polished it, and returned it without expecting any reward." Mr. Grant watches Mrs. Thompson's face as she remembers the moment. Her expression shows the same quiet satisfaction she displayed after cleaning his house perfectly. She finds joy in small acts of service that go unnoticed by the world. Margaret continues. "She's done things like this for everyone in the neighborhood, never asking for credit, never expecting praise." The reporter's pen moves rapidly across her notepad. This story has transformed from simple injustice into something deeper about unsung heroes and community bonds. Mrs. Thompson shifts uncomfortably under the attention. "I just try to help," she says modestly. "And today, you saved 17 children's lives," Jessica responds. Outside, the crowd has grown to include parents of the rescued children. They carry signs reading, "Thank you, Eleanor," and "Our hero." The gathering has become a celebration rather than a protest. Mr. Grant's phone rings with his daughter's number, but Mrs. Thompson suddenly doubles over in pain. Mrs. Thompson grips the marble counter as pain shoots through her chest. Her face goes pale, and the bundle of letters scatters across the floor. Margaret Miller rushes to support her, pearl necklace swinging as she moves. The reporter's camera captures every moment of the crisis. "Call an ambulance," Margaret shouts, her voice cutting through the chaos. Mr. Grant dials 911 with shaking fingers, while Mrs. Thompson struggles to breathe. Her modest blue dress clings to her trembling frame. 20 years of hard work and stress have taken their toll on her aging body. "I'm fine," Mrs. Thompson whispers, but her legs buckle beneath her. "No, you're not," Margaret insists, guiding her to the leather sofa. "You've been working yourself to death for decades." The reporter continues filming despite the medical emergency. Her red suit stands out against the neutral decor like blood on snow. Outside, the crowd presses against the windows, concerned for their neighborhood hero. "Turn off that camera," Mr. Grant demands, but Jessica ignores him. "This is breaking news," she responds coldly. Mrs. Thompson's breathing becomes more labored. Her weathered hands clutch at her chest, as if trying to hold her heart together. The silver compass lies forgotten on the coffee table, its polished surface reflecting the crystal chandelier. Sirens wail in the distance, but Mrs. Thompson closes her eyes and goes completely still. The paramedics burst through the front door as Mrs. Thompson lies unconscious on Mr. Grant's leather sofa. Their medical equipment transforms his elegant living room into an emergency treatment center. Margaret Miller holds Mrs. Thompson's hand while tears stream down her weathered cheeks. "She's been under enormous stress," Margaret explains to the lead paramedic. "Today has been overwhelming for her." The reporter continues broadcasting live, describing the dramatic scene for her television audience. Her red suit seems inappropriate for the gravity of the situation. Outside, the crowd has grown silent, sensing the emergency through the windows. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" the paramedic asks, checking Mrs. Thompson's vital signs. Mr. Grant stands helplessly nearby, watching the woman who raised his children fighting for her life. His expensive marble floors are now covered with medical supplies and scattered childhood letters. The pristine house feels violated by reality. "She never complained about anything," he says to no one in particular. 20 years and she never asked for help." "Because she knew you wouldn't listen," Margaret responds sharply. Mrs. Thompson's breathing becomes more labored. Her weathered hands clutch at her chest as if trying to hold her heart together. The silver compass lies forgotten on the coffee table, its polished surface reflecting the crystal chandelier. Sirens wail in the distance, but Mrs. Thompson closes her eyes and goes completely still. The paramedics burst through the front door as Mrs. Thompson lies unconscious on Mr. Grant's leather sofa. Their medical equipment transforms his elegant living room into an emergency treatment center. Margaret Miller holds Mrs. Thompson's hand while tears stream down her weathered cheeks. "She's been under enormous stress," Margaret explains to the lead paramedic. "Today has been overwhelming for her." The reporter continues broadcasting live, describing the dramatic scene for her television audience. Her red suit seems inappropriate for the gravity of the situation. Outside, the crowd has grown silent, sensing the emergency through the windows. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" the paramedic asks, checking Mrs. Thompson's vital signs. Mr. Grant stands helplessly nearby, watching the woman who raised his children fighting for her life. His expensive marble floors are now covered with medical supplies and scattered childhood letters. The pristine house feels violated by reality. "She never complained about anything," he says to no one in particular. 20 years and she never asked for help." "Because she knew you wouldn't listen," Margaret responds sharply. Mrs. Thompson's eyes flutter open, focusing on Mr. Grant with surprising clarity. Her lips move, but no sound emerges. The paramedic prepares an oxygen mask while his partner readies the stretcher. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately," the paramedic announces. The compass on the coffee table catches the light, and Mrs. Thompson reaches for it with desperate fingers. Mrs. Thompson's fingers close around the silver compass as the paramedics prepare to move her to the stretcher. The antique piece seems to give her strength, connecting her to Margaret's decades of friendship and shared neighborhood memories. Her breathing stabilizes slightly with the oxygen mask. "I want to go with her," Margaret declares, gathering her leather purse. "Family only," the paramedic responds automatically. "We are family," Margaret insists fiercely. "More family than blood relations who never visit." Mr. Grant feels the sharp edge of truth in her words. His own children live across the country, calling only on holidays and birthdays. Mrs. Thompson has been the constant presence in his life, the reliable foundation he never acknowledged. "I'll drive you to the hospital," he tells Margaret, surprising everyone. "The ambulance is faster," the paramedic explains, lifting the stretcher. Mrs. Thompson removes her oxygen mask for a moment, her voice barely audible. "The children's letters," she whispers, looking at the scattered papers on his floor. "I'll bring them," Mr. Grant promises, kneeling to collect the precious memories. Jessica Ford continues her live broadcast, following the stretcher toward the door. Her camera captures Mrs. Thompson's pale face and Margaret's protective presence. The crowd parts respectfully as they emerge. The ambulance doors close with finality, and Mr. Grant realizes he doesn't even know which hospital they're going to. Mr. Grant speeds through the city, following the ambulance's flashing lights. The bundle of children's letters sits on his passenger seat, carefully retied with the faded blue ribbon. His expensive car feels empty and cold compared to Mrs. Thompson's old sedan with its family photographs. At the hospital, Margaret paces the waiting room while nurses rush between emergency rooms. The sterile white walls and harsh fluorescent lights create an atmosphere of clinical urgency. Other families wait for news about their loved ones, united by worry and hope. "She has no insurance," Margaret says suddenly. "Eleanor lost her coverage when she got older and couldn't find full-time work." "What do you mean?" Mr. Grant asks, though he already knows the answer. "You only hired her part-time to avoid benefits. She's been working 3 jobs to make ends meet." The truth hits him like cold water. While he built his fortune, Mrs. Thompson struggled to survive on partial wages and no medical coverage. Her quiet dignity masked decades of financial hardship that he never bothered to notice. "Room 247 needs immediate family," a nurse announces over the intercom. "That's us," Margaret says, standing quickly. Mr. Grant follows her down the corridor, clutching the letters. Through the window of room 247, he sees Mrs. Thompson connected to monitors and machines. Her silver hair spreads across the white pillow like spun moonlight. A doctor approaches with clipboard in hand, and his expression tells them everything. Dr. Walker approaches with his clipboard, his expression serious but not hopeless. Mrs. Thompson lies peacefully in the hospital bed, her silver hair framing her face against the white pillows. The monitors beep steadily, showing stable vital signs that bring relief to the waiting room. "She's had a severe panic attack combined with exhaustion," he explains to Margaret and Mr. Grant. "Her body shut down from stress and overwork." "Will she be okay?" Margaret asks, gripping her pearl necklace. "With proper rest and medical care, yes, but she needs to reduce her workload significantly." Mr. Grant steps closer to the bed, still holding the bundle of letters. Mrs. Thompson's breathing is steady now, though her weathered hands show the calluses of decades of hard labor. The modest gold wedding ring on her finger catches the room's soft light. "I only hired her part-time," he admits quietly. Dr. Walker nods knowingly. "We see this often with domestic workers. No benefits, irregular hours, constant financial pressure." Margaret sits in the chair beside the bed, taking Mrs. Thompson's hand gently. Her protective presence fills the small room with warmth. Through the window, the city lights twinkle like distant stars. "Eleanor, you're going to be fine." Mrs. Thompson's eyes open slowly, focusing on their concerned faces, and she smiles with genuine peace. Mrs. Thompson's smile transforms the sterile hospital room into something warmer. Her eyes move from Margaret's concerned face to Mr. Grant's guilty expression, then settle on the bundle of letters in his hands. Recognition and gratitude flicker across her weathered features. "You saved them," she whispers, her voice hoarse but steady. "They were always yours," Mr. Grant replies, placing the letters on her bedside table. "The children wrote them to you, not me." Margaret squeezes Mrs. Thompson's hand gently. "The whole neighborhood is outside, wanting to check on you. You've touched more lives than you know." Through the window, they can see cars filling the hospital parking lot. Neighbors, parents of rescued children, and concerned community members have gathered in support. Their headlights create patterns of light against the evening darkness. "I never wanted attention," Mrs. Thompson says softly. "I just tried to do right by people." "And you did," Dr. Walker interjects, checking her chart. "Those 17 children are alive because of your courage." Mr. Grant shifts uncomfortably, knowing his own failures are highlighted by her heroism. For 20 years he focused on business success while ignoring the woman who held his household together. Her quiet strength made his achievements possible. "Mrs. Thompson, Eleanor, I need to ask your forgiveness." Margaret raises her eyebrows, surprised by his humility, but Mrs. Thompson reaches out her hand. Mrs. Thompson extends her hand toward Mr. Grant, the gesture bridging 20 years of employer-employee distance. Her fingers are warm despite the medical crisis, and her touch carries decades of faithful service and unexpected forgiveness. The bundle of letters sits nearby like a testament to love and loyalty. "There's nothing to forgive," she simply says. "You gave me work when I needed it most." "You gave me scraps," Mr. Grant corrects, his voice breaking slightly. "Part-time wages, no benefits, barely any recognition for everything you did."
Margaret watches this exchange with cautious hope. Her pearl earrings catch the overhead light as she leans forward, witnessing something remarkable unfold. Outside the window, the crowd continues growing as news of Mrs. Thompson's hospitalization spreads through social media. "My daughter Sarah needed expensive treatments. You never knew, but your job helped pay for her final months of care." That meant everything to me. The revelation hits Mr. Grant like a physical blow. While he worried about coffee stains and perfect appearances, Mrs. Thompson used her wages to provide dignity for her dying child. Her quiet strength carried burdens he never imagined. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asks. "Pride, I suppose. And you had your own worries with the business." Dr. Walker approaches with a warm smile, carrying official-looking documents. Behind him, a hospital administrator in a navy blue suit waits with barely contained excitement. The news must be significant, and Mrs. Thompson's eyes widen with surprise. Dr. Walker hands Mrs. Thompson an official certificate, while the hospital administrator beams with pride. The document bears the city seal and formal signatures, transforming her modest hospital room into a place of honor. Margaret adjusts her reading glasses to see the elaborate calligraphy. "Eleanor Thompson, the City of Springfield hereby awards you the Medal of Civic Heroism for extraordinary courage in saving 17 children's lives." The administrator steps forward, his navy blue suit crisp and formal. "The mayor wanted to present this personally, but given your condition, he asked us to deliver it immediately." Mrs. Thompson's eyes fill with tears as she holds the certificate. Her weathered hands trace the golden embossed letters of her name. For 70 years, she has lived quietly, serving others without recognition or reward. "There's more," the administrator continues. "A local businessman has established the Eleanor Thompson Scholarship Fund for children pursuing nursing careers. It's already raised $50,000. Margaret gasps with delight, while Mr. Grant stares in amazement. The woman he dismissed over coffee stains has become a community symbol of selfless service. Her example inspires generosity that will help future generations. "I don't know what to say," Mrs. Thompson whispers. "You don't need to say anything," Mr. Grant responds, pulling out his checkbook. "But I do." He writes quickly, then shows her the amount, and her heart monitor starts beeping rapidly. Mrs. Thompson stares at the check in Mr. Grant's hands, her heart monitor beeping with surprise and emotion. The amount reads $50,000, matching the scholarship fund and representing years of unpaid overtime, missing benefits, and simple human decency. Margaret covers her mouth in shock. "This is your back pay," Mr. Grant explains, his voice steady with conviction. "Plus healthcare coverage, plus a pension I should have provided decades ago." "I can't accept this," Mrs. Thompson protests weakly. "You can and you will," Margaret insists, her pearl necklace trembling with emotion. Dr. Walker smiles at the scene, having witnessed many moments of human kindness in his years at the hospital. The certificate lies on the bedside table next to the bundle of children's letters, symbols of love given and received. "There's one more thing," Mr. Grant continues. "I'm establishing a domestic workers' benefits fund in your name. Every person who works in service deserves dignity, health care, and security." Mrs. Thompson's tears flow freely now, not from pain, but from overwhelming gratitude. The modest gold wedding ring on her finger catches the light as she reaches for both their hands. Her grip is strong despite the day's ordeal. "Thank you," she whispers. "Both of you." Outside, the crowd has begun singing Amazing Grace, their voices floating through the hospital windows like angels. The sound fills the room with hope and community love. Margaret pulls out her silver compass and places it in Mrs. Thompson's palm, and the three unlikely friends sit together as the city celebrates their neighborhood hero. Through her sacrifice and grace, Mrs. Thompson taught them all that true wealth lies not in marble counters or business deals, but in the quiet dignity of serving others with love.